Okay, is my screen visible? Can you see the PPT? Fine. Good. Okay, so till now what we have discussed, let's quickly recap that. When we started this chapter on concurrency, first we discussed the principles of concurrency. There we discuss what kind of interaction can be there between processes and some terms and tech. Then uh, we talk about mutual exclusion and how this mutual exclusion can be achieved. For that, we talk about different approaches. First, we talk about hardware approach, then we talk about software approach, and finally, we could conclude that only software approach or only hardware support, that is not sufficient, and that's why it is required to have some support from OS or programming language itself. So what kind of support you can have from programming language or OS itself? So there are three concepts that we are going to three concepts are there which we need to discuss. First is semaphores, monitors, and message passing. Out of these three, semaphores and monitors, we have already discussed. We have discussed how we can achieve mutual exclusion as well as how two processes can synchronize using semaphores and monitors. So that is already discussed. Now today we'll be discussing message passing mechanism, how you can use this message passing mechanism to achieve mutual exclusion plus synchronization. And then we'll discuss one more classical problem like readers writers problem. We have already discussed producer consumer problem, and now today we'll discuss readers writers problems. So this is the recap. Now let us start with message passing. So message passing is a very simple thing where it can be used. So when processes interact with one another, two fundamental requirements must be satisfied. One is synchronization and another is communication. Okay, when two processes interact, they need to execute in sync so that there is no problem. And then they need to communicate something to each other. And message passing is one solution to the second requirement. Basically, communication can be achieved using message passing. Okay. And it works with shared memory and with distributed system. So basically, if you have shared memory among all the processes that are executing, or these processes are executing on different machines and they are distributed on the distributed system, still idea of message passing is going to work, because this is very general idea which works in every condition. So basically, what is message passing? Very simple idea. One process sends message, another process receives message. So the actual function of message passing is normally provided in the form of pair of primitives. There are two functions that are required. One is send, another is receive. When you send a message, it needs to provide some destination and the message. And when receive is called, it needs to provide source and some box where message will be read. So send and receive, these are the two important functions of primitives which are required. Now, let us talk about synchronization. So when communication is there, so communication requires synchronization. Okay, when you use this send and receive, there should be some synchronization between sender and receiver. So sender must send before receiver can receive. That should be there. Otherwise, there is no point, right? If receiver is trying to receive but sender hasn't sent anything, not possible. So synchronization must be there, that sender needs to send first, then receiver can receive. So what happens to a process after it issues a send or receive primitive? So if let's say there are two processes, P1 and P2, one has issued send and another has issued receive. What happens once they issue this command? Okay, so there are different possibilities. Like sender and receiver may or may not be blocking. Okay, now processes, let's say one process who sends some message, will it be blocked after sending, or it will not be blocked? Similarly, the process which has invoked receive function, will it be blocked after that or it will continue? So what is the idea? So there are different possibilities for this. Okay, at least you can see there are four possibilities. Both are blocking, both are non-blocking. One of them is blocking, another of them is non-blocking, right? These are the at least four possibilities. So let us see these possibilities of this different implementation of send and receive. Let's say the send function is a blocking function and receive is also blocking. So how it works? Both sender and receiver are blocked until message is delivered. So sender who sends message, after calling send, it is not going to do anything further until unless receiver receives that message and it gets some acknowledgement. Okay, so that is called blocking call. Okay, that is also called as rendezvous. It allows for tight synchronization between processes because sender, it is blocking after sending message and it will be blocked until receiver receives that message, because receiver is also blocking. Let's say receiver is invoked, but it can't do anything further until unless it receives the message. So both are blocking calls, and this is a very tight synchronization. They are focusing only on that particular message communication, that okay, I am sending, someone is receiving, until unless it is received I don't do anything. That is what sender says. Receiver, until unless I receive the message I can't go further. So that is receiver's job. So both are blocking, and that is tight synchronization. But then there can be another idea, non-blocking send. Sender is non-blocking, so, and that is more natural for many concurrent programming tasks. Okay, so here you have now non-blocking send and blocking receiver. So that is another possibility. Sender is non-blocking, but receiver is a blocking receiver. So what happens? Sender continues on. Once it sends the message, then it forgets about everything and it continues with its job. But receiver is blocked until the request message arrives. There can be another possibility, non-blocking send, non-blocking receiver. So in that case, sender after sending, it will continue. Receiver, when receiver is invoked, it will check. If there is a message, it will receive. If there is no message, it will continue. So it is not going to wait. It is not going to wait for a message. That is non-blocking receive. Are you getting this idea? Please let me know in the chat box. I think this is very simple to understand actually. Okay. Now, there are few design issues that we need to discuss for this message passing mechanism. Design issues, basically. What kind of addressing is used? Because you can see that sender and receiver both, they use some kind of addresses, destination and source. So what kind of addressing mechanism can be there? There are basically two types of addressing mechanism, direct and indirect. Okay. So sending process needs to be able to specify which process should receive the message. Okay. And this can be direct addressing or indirect addressing. What is direct addressing? What is direct addressing? So send primitive includes a specific identifier of the destination process. Maybe if two processes are execute and two processes are doing message passing, let's say P1 is sending, P2 needs to receive. So P1 will mention the ID of P2 or the particular identifier through which that process can be identified. That will be directly specified in the send primitive, and that is direct addressing. I know who is going to receive, so I will provide direct address of that process. What about receive process? Receive primitive could know ahead of the time which process a message is expected from. Okay, so sometimes in receive, now receive process, I mean the process which is going to receive a message, and if you see it is mentioning source. So sometimes receiver knows that which process is going to send message and from where I need to get this message. If receiver knows that ahead of time, in the source field, it will provide the address of the process from which it is expecting some message. That is direct addressing for receiver. Okay. And for that, receive primitive could use source parameter to return a value. Okay. Okay. Now what else? Sometimes what happens, receiver doesn't know who is going to send message to me. but I want to know who has sent the message. So what I'm talking about is here, this source, if receiver knows from which process it has to receive a message, it will provide address of that process here while calling receive. But if receiver doesn't know that which process is sending message, but receiver wants to know about that process who is sending the message, after it has sent the message, after it has received the message, then it will send some black box, or you can say blank box here, just a box, variable, source variable will be sent. And when it will receive the message, at that time, from that message, it will extract the information that who has sent, and that information will be put inside this. So source variable, after this receive is over, source variable contains information regarding the sender. So these are the two different possibilities for receiver side in direct addressing. Either receiver itself provides the source address if it knows who is sending message. If he doesn't know who is sending message and he wants to know about that, then in that case, this is a blank box, you can say empty box, where source information will be put while receiving the message, and after receiving the message, receiver can know about that. So that is two different ways for addressing in case of receive. Then there can be indirect addressing. Direct addressing means sender and receiver knows about each other. Okay, they can directly provide each other's address. How about indirect addressing? Now they are communicating. If sender and receiver, they are communicating through something else. Okay, something in between them. So sender will send information to that particular entity, and receiver will get information from that particular entity. So they are not knowing each other directly. They are not talking to each other directly. They are using some intermediate entity for that. So messages are sent to a shared data structure consisting of queues. Normally it is a data structure like kind of queues. And these queues are called mailboxes. These queues are called mailboxes. The simplest example of this mailboxes, you can say like sometimes you may see some this boxes outside houses where this postman can put all the posts, right? And the house owner, they get that post from that boxes at the end of the day, something like that. So that is indirect communication. The postman puts all the posts in that box, and owner of that house, who is supposed to be receiver of that, will receive those information, those posts from that mailbox. Okay, and that's why it is called mailboxes. So one process sends a message to the mailbox and the other process picks up the message from the mailbox. Okay, so that is indirect addressing. So there is some intermediate entity, and this can be a kind of architectures, possible architectures between process, like whenever processes are doing indirect communication, these are the possible architectures. There is a single sender and single receiver, and there is a shared mailbox. So sender will put message inside this and receiver will receive message from that. So this is one-to-one communication. There can be many-to-one communication. There are multiple senders who are sending message to this mailbox and receiver receives from that. And you can see here something called port. If you know network, okay, what is port number 80? Are you aware of that port number 80 in our systems? Do you know that port number 80, port number 21? Anyone? Basically, this kind of design, it shows client server communication. This design shows client server communication. These are the clients and this is a server process. Let's say this is your web server process. This is your web server process, and multiple clients, they want to use your service. So they send request. So that is a message. Request itself is a message. So they will send this message to your process, not directly, but they will send this request to the port number 80. That is a default port for web servers. Are you aware of this idea? Ports. Have you gone through the subject called network, computer network or something like that? No, okay. So, but you are using it, right? You are using applications and web servers. So you must be aware of that. There is a port concept, which is nothing but the logical identity where process runs on the network. So this port for web servers by default it is 80. Okay. So this is client server kind of architecture where multiple clients can send request for particular service through this port. So they will send request in this port, and this port will provide that. I mean, this server will read that request one by one from this port. So this port is your mailbox. Then you may have one to many. One client can send request to multiple servers. That is also possible. That is also mailbox. Then you can have many to many communication. So these all form of communications are possible when it is indirect, right? Even in direct also it is possible, but currently we are talking about indirect process communication, and these are the different forms of indirect process communication. So that is addressing design issue that we need to discuss: direct addressing and indirect addressing. I hope you are getting this. Very simple thing to understand, right? Then another issue is what can be the message format that is being sent. Okay, that is another design issue: message format. So there can be mainly two types of messages: short and fixed length, and variable length and more flexible. Okay, short messages with fixed length, that is one type of message format. Another is fixed length and more flexible messages. So are you aware of HTTP request, HTTP response, this kind of stuff? Are you aware of that? Okay, so if I talk about HTTP request, let's say what it contains. HTTP request, what it contains. Anyone? Have you ever seen that it contains two parts, header and body? Do you know that? HTTP request, if you talk about HTTP request, okay, it contains two parts, header and body. Header contains some meta information, something like this. What is the meta? Yes, anyone is trying to say something? Okay. It may have message type, destination ID. Okay, normally this kind of information you will see in your IP packet header. You will see this kind of information in your IP packet header that you will learn in networks wherever you learn it. So basically it contains information about the message itself, that what type of message it is, what is the destination ID, what is the source ID, that is destination address, source address, what is the length of this message, other control information can be there, what is the priority of this message, is there any other fragment of this message or not. So this kind of information, which are called meta information, they are there. And finally after that you have body, which contains actual message, whatever you want to convey, hi, hello, whatever, right? So that actual message content is there. And this is some general message format. This is very general message format. Protocol to protocol it may be differing, right? And sometimes it is fixed length, sometimes it is variable length. If it is variable length, it is always a good idea to provide this field, message length, so that sender and receiver knows that what is the length of this message. If it is fixed length, you need not to worry about, because it is always of fixed length. So this is very general message format, and this is one design issue that we need to discuss in terms of message passing. So let's see how we can achieve mutual exclusion using message passing or using messages, right? So can we achieve that mutual exclusion? So let us try to understand this program. So there is one mailbox created. Box is a mailbox. That is our, so basically they are using indirect addressing, and mailbox is the entity, right, through which communication will be communication will happen through that mailbox. So that box is created, and initially this main function will send null message to that box. Basically this box, it contains null message, and this null message behaves like a token, because in mutual exclusion what is required? When we talk about mutual exclusion, what is required? What is the meaning of mutual exclusion? Yes, can anyone tell me? What does it mean by mutual exclusion? I hope now you know this. Come on. Yeah, only one process in critical section. So whichever process wants to enter into the critical section, first it needs to acquire that lock or the token, right? First that process needs to acquire the lock or the token. This null message is that token, which is already put inside this box, inside this box. So whichever process wants to enter into the critical section, first it has to receive this message. So whichever process receives this first and remove it from the mailbox, that process will be allowed to enter into the critical section. And when that process leaves the critical section, it will send one more null message. It will send now new null message into the box so that another process can acquire that. Does this make sense? Okay, so you can see here, initially this box contains one null message, which is a token. So whichever process wants to enter into the critical section, what it does, of course, it is an infinite loop, which is shown here. First, it will try to receive that message from the box. If there is a message, null message, it will receive it. Okay. If it is received, if receive is a blocking call here. First of all, in this particular example, we assume that sender is non-blocking and receiver is a blocking call. So receive message, it is a blocking call. So it will not be completed unless and until there is some message received. Okay. So once message is received, it means this process has got the token and it can enter into the critical section. So now it is entering into the critical section. And once it comes out of critical section, it will send same message back to the box. So when receiver receives that message from the box, now box is empty. Now the box is empty. And if another process tries to receive a message, it will be blocked because there is no message in the box. When this process completes its critical section and send message to box, now another process which was blocked, it will be able to receive the message and it will be able to execute the critical section. So this is the idea. So here this null message is nothing but a token which can be acquired at a time by only one process, and that is how critical section can be entered by that process and mutual exclusion can be achieved. Does this make sense? Yes. Are you getting this? How you can achieve mutual exclusion, right? Very simple idea. Now let us see, can we solve that producer consumer problem, bounded buffer problem, using this message passing mechanism? So let us try to understand that. Okay, again, that is very simple idea. See, initially there are two mailboxes. There are two mailboxes. One is may produce, another is may consume. May produce means there is a space so that new item can be produced by the producer. If that may produce mailbox contains some message, it means new item can be produced. And may consume, if that contains some message, it means consumer can consume the item. So there are two mailboxes. And initially what this main function does, whatever is the capacity, okay, there is some capacity of the buffer, right? So whatever is the capacity, that many null messages will be already sent to may produce. So can anyone tell me what does this mean? Why they are doing it? What is the purpose of this line? What is the purpose of this line? Can anyone tell me? Initially, main function will send number of messages which are equal to capacity of the buffer. Null messages will be sent to may produce mailbox. So what is the purpose of this line? Anyone? Because producer, before it produces the item, it needs to check, can I produce the item? Is there any enough space in the buffer so that I can produce the item? So initially all the spaces are null. That is the meaning. It means all the spaces are empty and producer can produce that many items without any waiting. Okay, that's why may produce mailbox contains that many null messages, which is equal to the capacity of the buffer. So you can see here producer, it will try to receive message from may produce. If there are some messages in may produce, initially number of the number of messages which are there, that is equal to the capacity of this. It means all the spaces are empty and that many items can be produced by the producer. So that many messages can be received without blocking. Okay, so that many items can be produced without waiting. And when it receives a message, it will produce the item and put it in the message itself and send that item. Now send that item to the may consume mailbox and not to the may produce. Because once item is produced, okay, it is going to occupy your buffer space, but that buffer space will be emptied by consumer, and that's why it will send this message to may consume mailbox, from where consumer will consume. So what consumer does, it is receiving some message from may consume. If there is any message, it will receive it, it will consume it, and then it will send, as it has consumed some message from the consumer mailbox, it will send one null message to may produce to tell the producer that I have consumed one message and you have one empty space where you can put new items, something like that. Are you getting this? Okay, so that is all about message passing and how you can achieve mutual exclusion using message passing, how you can solve bounded buffer problem using message passing, that is there. Next is readers writers problem. Again, this is very classical problem, and it what do you say, if you understand this readers writers problem, basically it is not one problem, right? It is a, you can say it is a class of problems. There can be number of problems which can be mapped to this readers writers problem. So let us understand this. What is readers writers problem? A data area is shared among many processes. Very simple, right? And it is a very general case. Most of the time this happens, that a data area is shared among many processes. And there are some processes which only read that data area, and there are some processes which only write to that area. The process which writes to that area, it doesn't read it. And the process which reads from that data area, it doesn't write to it. So this is called reader writer problem. This is called readers writers. Writer never reads and reader never writes. Okay. So what are the conditions to be satisfied? Okay. Multiple readers may read the file at once. Now this shared data area can be anything. It can be a file, it can be main block of the main memory, right? Anything which can be shared among multiple processes. So multiple readers may read the file at once. Only one writer at a time may write. If a writer is writing to the file, no reader may read it. Let me give you one example which is given in your book. I'm not sure whether I have put it here or not. Okay. Think about the library catalog. You must have visited your library and there must be catalog of that library in some form, maybe in hard copy form, maybe in soft form, I don't know. But if you go to library, if you want to find out where the book is, where the particular book is, there must be some, catalog which is displayed somewhere in the library. You go to that catalog and you find out, okay, I want this book. And you then again, you will see, okay, where it is placed. And you go to that particular rack and you find that book. I'm sure you must have done, all of you must have done this, right? Right? Now, tell me, how many students can read that same catalog at the same time? How many readers, how many students can read the same catalog at the same time? What is the possibility? Many at the same site, right? At the same time, many students can read that same catalog. Is it going to affect? Is it going to corrupt that catalog? No. So multiple readers can read that same catalog at the same time, which is a shared data. Now, as a student, can you update that catalog? Can you write anything inside that catalog as a student? No. So student who is a reader cannot write to it. right? But think about the writer. Who can be the writer who writes into that catalog? Means if there is some updation required, librarian, right? Librarian, there can be one librarian or more than one librarians, right? They are the writers. They are not interested in reading that. They simply update certain thing. If required, they put new entry, or if required to update something, they write it to that. So basically they are writers. They are not interested in reading it. Now, tell me at a time, how many librarians can write to it? Only one, right? If multiple are trying to write to it, there can be some corrupted data. There can be some corrupted data. Do you agree? Okay. Now tell me, if writer, librarian is updating that catalog, are you allowed to read that at that time? No. So when writer is writing, no writer, no other writer, or no reader is allowed to read that file. So if a writer is writing to the file, no reader may read it, or no other writer can write to that. Only one writer at a time may write, and multiple readers may read the file at once. Are you getting this example? Okay. So just keep this example in your mind and let us try to solve this problem, because there is a requirement of mutual exclusion. But not only between readers or between writers, among readers and writers also mutual exclusion is required. So we can use a general mutual exclusion solution to this. Okay, we can use our general mutual exclusion solution to this, like we use for producer consumer, something like that. But then it will fails to permit allowable operations like two readers at once. Okay, if you talk about producer consumer solution, that is our general mutual exclusion solution. Okay, let's say there is one reader process, there is one writer process, there can be multiple readers, there can be multiple writers. But at a time, if we use our general solution of the mutual exclusion, in fact, if we use our general mutual exclusion solution to this problem, that solution will not be an efficient solution, because it won't allow multiple readers to read at the same time. But here we require that. Do you agree with this statement? Because general mutual exclusion solution, it allows only one process at a time in the critical section. So either only one reader or only one writer. But here, what is our requirement? Multiple readers can read at the same time without any problem. And note that this is distinct from producer consumer problem. Can you identify how this readers writers problem is different from producer consumer problem? Can you visualize that? Can you identify that? Actually, they are different problems. Can anyone tell me how this producer consumer is different from readers writer? You can unmute and you can speak if you want. And you see, you need to understand this. Otherwise, there is no need to discuss this readers writer problem. Okay, as it is different, that's why we are discussing.
So in producer consumer, we at a time only one of them works, whereas in readers writer there are multiple readers, so it is not possible for to achieve mutual exclusion.
Yeah, that is true. That is we just discussed. But can you tell me why in producer consumer at a time only one producer, either one producer or one consumer is allowed, not multiple producer or not multiple consumers?
Because one waits for the other signal.
No, that is the solution that we, that is a restriction that we put in our solution. But why we need to put that restriction?
Sir, in consumers, after consuming, they have to remove that message, whereas readers do not remove after reading it.
Basically, yeah, when you say consumer removes the message, it means it is also writing. Can we say that way? It is updating. Yes. Can we say that? Yes. Right? Because consumer is not only reader. It is not only reader. What it does, once it consumes the message, it increments the pointer, that is index of the array. Can we say that way?
Yes.
So consumer is not only reader, it reads the message and then it updates the pointer, updates the index, so that next consumption can be performed on the next index. So here producer consumer problem, it is different because in producer consumer, both producer and consumer, they update the buffer index. They both update the buffer. Someone puts it inside that, someone consumes from that. Whereas in readers writer, readers are only readers. They don't update anything. They don't consume anything directly. I mean, they are not going to remove anything. They are not going to update any pointer or nothing like that. That is why readers writers problem is different from producer consumer. And that is why in producer consumer, whether it is a producer process or consumer process, at a time only one process is allowed because it is updating something, be it producer or consumer. So consumer has to adjust queue contents and pointers. That is why it is different from readers writer. I hope you understand this difference. Yes. So let's solve this problem using using semaphores. Okay, and here there are two possibilities to solve this problem. One solution which gives high priority to readers before writer. Okay, this solution is formed, it is designed such a way that if there is a reader waiting, it will be given higher priority than the writer who is waiting to write. So let us understand this solution first. So you can see that initially read count is one global variable, you can say shared variable, which is initially 0 because there is no reader right now. There are two semaphores, WSEM, which is related to writing activity. So if this is blocked, if this semaphore is acquired, okay, no writer can write, no other writer can write. So it is initially 1 and is another semaphore X. So let us see what is writer and reader. So writer is very simple. Writer is very simple. It will wait on write sem. Okay, if it goes through this, okay, if it completes this, there is no blocking, it means it can write, so it will do some writing and then it will signal. So very simple writer. Okay, now let us see reader here, because there can be multiple readers. See, writer can be only once at a time, right? Only one writer at a time. So suppose there is one writer, there is no reader right now, and writer process executes. So what will happen to this? Will it be allowed or it will be blocked? There is no reader and there is only one writer right now. So if it calls wait on WSEM, will it be allowed or blocked?
Allowed.
Yes, because it is initially 1. So this will become 0 and that's why it will be allowed and it will start writing. Now let's say while this writer is writing, another writer comes. What it will try to do? It will try to wait on WSEM. Will it be allowed or it will be blocked?
Blocked.
Blocked, because WSEM is going to be negative. As it is already 0, wait will make it negative. So that process has to wait. So if one writer is writing, no other writer is allowed. Now let us see reader. So let's say one writer is writing, so WSEM is blocked. I mean WSEM is 0. Let's say one writer is writing, there is no other process and some reader comes. So WSEM is 0. Now reader, what it does? Wait X. This is the semaphore to protect this shared variable between reader processes, because read count variable will be used among reader processes. Multiple readers are there. So this variable is shared between those processes and it should be guarded, it should be protected, and that's why we use some semaphore for that. So wait X is the semaphore which is guarding this read count variable. So then after getting this X control, I mean after getting this semaphore X, it will update the read count plus plus, because there can be multiple readers. So read count cannot be updated simultaneously, right? So there is a requirement of semaphore lock. So wait X, then read count plus plus, and it checks if this is the first reader. If this is the only reader process, if this is the only or the first reader process, first it needs to wait on WSEM just to check, is there any writer who is writing? Is there any writer who is writing? So in our case, where one writer is already executing do writing, what will happen at this place?
Reader will be blocked.
Yes, reader will be blocked because WSEM is 0, because one writer is already writing, which has made WSEM 0. So this 0 will become minus. It will go in negative and reader will be blocked. Reader will be blocked. So, and that is the requirement. If writer is writing, no reader is allowed. Are you getting?
But sir, here we had readers as the priority, right?
Yeah. I'll show you why it is. How it is given priority. I'll show that. See, priority does not mean that if writer is writing, reader will preempt that and start reading it. No. Is it possible? When I say priority means what? If readers and writers both are waiting, at that time, reader will be given priority next time. If the next process need to execute, where readers is waiting as well as writer is waiting, reader will be given next chance to read rather than writer will be given a next chance. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So let's say one writer is writing, that's why this reader will be waiting. Fine. Now, while this reader is waiting, another writer comes. That will also be waiting. That will also be waiting, yes or no?
Yes.
So now one reader and one writer is waiting. One writer is already writing. One reader is waiting. One writer is waiting. But let us say, okay, forget this case right now. Okay, or other way, you just think that first writer which was writing, it is over. That writing is over. So it will signal WSEM. Now, what is the situation? One reader is waiting and one writer is waiting. And that is in queue. So normally, according to the FIFO order, this reader will be given a chance. This reader will be given a chance, yes or no?
Yes.
So let's say this reader given a chance and it will clear this stage. It will clear this stage and signal X. So now there is one reader. Now there is one reader and one writer is already waiting on WSEM. So this reader, it will start reading. Now when it is reading, let's say other reader comes. Other readers comes, right? New reader process comes. Already one writer process is waiting. One reader is reading and next reader comes. So what will happen to next reader? Signal X is already done. So wait X cleared, read count plus plus. So read count will become 2. Is it equal to 1? Is read count equal to 1?
No.
No, because it is 2. So this will not be executed. So it need not to wait. Because why it need not to wait on WSEM? Because already one reader is reading. So another reader can also read. There is no need to wait for writer. Because as one reader is reading, it means there is no writer. It means there is no writer which is writing. So if there is no writer which is writing and one reader is reading, I can also read. So it will simply signal X and start reading. So second reader is starting reading while writer is still waiting. While writer is still waiting, if one reader is reading, another reader can also start reading. And once this reading is over, read count will be reduced and it will check if this is equal to 0, then signal WSEM. And this X basically it is the guarding the read count variable, whereas WSEM is guarding the writer and reader from each other. Does this make sense? Are you getting or you are having any question on this? Yes, are you getting this or having any question on this? Okay, so this is the solution where readers have priority. Now writers have priority. So this is the solution for that. Now you can see that, let's take writer first, and we have two more semaphores. Instead of only WSEM, we have RSEM and WSEM both. And instead of X only, we have X plus Y plus Z, 3 others. So total 5 semaphores are there. And there are read count and write count both, because there can be multiple readers and multiple writers. So we are just maintaining this. And here writers have priority. That's why we require write count. Okay. So let us understand how this goes ahead. So first we'll take writer. So again, this is infinite loop. And there is a Y semaphore, which is protecting write count. If multiple writers are there, write count, which is shared among multiple writers. See, multiple writers means at a time they are not writing. When I say multiple writers means they are not writing at a time, but multiple writer processes are there. If one writer is writing, at that time, if some readers are waiting and some writers are waiting, who should be given a next chance? Writer or reader? Writer. That is why we are forming this. We are using this, okay? Because we want to give priority to writer. That's why we are using write count and some other semaphores. So just try to understand this code first. First, this Y semaphore, it is used to guard this variable so that it cannot be accessed by multiple writer processes, right? So wait Y, write count plus plus. Let's say this is the first writer. Let's say this is the first writer process. There is no reader process. Okay. So writer comes and it executes this. So write count will become 1. This will make it 1. Right. And it will check if write count equal to 1. I also need to wait for rsem. Rsem means, is there any reader waiting? Is there any reader who is reading? Is there any reader who is reading? So if it is so, I need to wait for it. I need to wait for that. So wait rsem. Okay. But if initially there is no reader and rsem is 1, so this will not be blocking the writer, and writer will go further and signal Y, and then it will wait on the writer. It will wait on WSEM just to check, is there any writer already writing? There is no reader, fine. There is no reader, but is there any writer who is writing? But this is the first writer. This is the first writer, so no one is writing. So this is again 1, so it will become 0 and it will start writing. It will start writing. So this is the case right now. And this remaining part is reverse of this. First it will signal WSEM, then it will reduce W count, then it will check if W count equal to 0, it will signal rsem. So the second half is the reverse of first half. That is writer. That is writer. Now in reader, reader is waiting on 2 different semaphore in a sequence. First on Z, another on rsem. Why? We will see. We will see that why there are 2 semaphores for readers to wait for, right? So first it will wait on Z. If it is allowed, it will wait on rsem. If it is allowed, it will wait on X and update the read count. If read count equal to 1, now it has to wait. If this is the first reader. Yes. Anyone is trying to ask anything? So if this is the first reader, it also needs to wait for WSEM because it needs to check, is there any writer which is writing? If no writer is writing, then WSEM initially it is 1. Let's say there is no writer, suppose WSEM is 1. So this will be allowed. It will signal the X, it will signal rsem, it will signal Z and start reading. And once it is over, it will decrease read count, check the read count. If it is equal to 0, it will signal WSEM and over. So this is a simple code of reader and writer. But let us try to understand why we require this 2 semaphore here instead of 1 only. So let's take one case. Let us take one case. Let's say one reader is reading, and this is the solution where writer is having higher priority. When reader and writer both are waiting, which process goes next is writer. And that is how we are going to check it. Let's say first a reader process comes. There is no writer, no other reader, only one reader. So that reader comes. Initially Z is 1, so it will be allowed. rsem is 1, so it will be allowed. X is 1, so it will be allowed. All these 3 will become 0. Read count will become 1. As it is equal to 1, it will wait on WSEM. WSEM initially it is 1. So this is also allowed, and WSEM will become 0. So all this will become 0. But as soon as this is over, WSEM becomes 0. Signal X will be there. So X will become 1 again. rsem will become 1 again. Z will become 1 again. So all these 3 semaphores are free except WSEM. WSEM is acquired by now this reader. And it is reading. And it is reading. So while this reader is reading, let's say one new writer comes. Let's say one writer comes. So let us see what happens. One reader is already reading. writer comes, it will wait on y, write count will become plus plus, so it is initially 0, it will become 1. If write count equal to 1, it will wait on rsem. It will wait on rsem. Now tell me, will it be allowed or it will be blocked here? Writer, it will be allowed or it will be blocked here? One reader is here, do reading. It is here, do reading. Why blocked? What is the value of rsem? When one reader is reading and first writer comes, what is the value of rsem at that time?
1.
1. So it is not blocked. It is not blocked. Okay. So it will go through this, but now it will make rsem 0. It will make rsem 0. Okay. Now, then it will wait for wsem. Now tell me, what will happen at this stage? One reader is reading. What will happen to this stage?
It will be blocked.
Yes, because it is already made 0 by first reader. The reader which is reading, it has already made this wsem 0. So writer is now waiting. It is blocked because reader is reading. So it will be blocked. Are you getting? So this writer, one more question is there, sir. Here, what if signal y is triggered below wait rsem? Okay, just hold your question. Let me complete this discussion, then I'll come back to your question. Okay, so now this writer, which is blocked at this point, it has made rsem 0. So rsem is now 0 and new reader comes. So writer is already waiting. One reader is reading, one writer is waiting on wsem, and new reader comes. Now tell me what will happen to that new reader. It will try to block, it will try to acquire z. Will it be able to acquire z? Will
Yes.
it be able to acquire z? Yes, because z is 1. So fine, it will clear this stage and come to this point. Will it be able to clear this stage, that reader?
No.
No, because it is acquired by writer, which is waiting on wsem. So we do not want any readers to queue upon rsem because we want to give priority to writer. rsem, on rsem only writer will be queued. So this rsem will block that reader as it is not allowed. As it is not allowed because rsem is acquired by writer, which is also waiting. So now let's say first reader which was reading, second reader is actually blocked on rsem. Second reader is blocked on rsem. Okay, first writer is blocked on wsem. Now let us say third reader comes. First reader is still reading. First writer is blocked on wsem. Second reader is blocked on rsem. Third reader comes. What will happen to that third reader? Will it be able to clear this stage?
No.
No, because z is already 0. Because of second reader who is blocked on rsem, it has yet not signal z, so z will be 0 and third reader will be blocked on this. So now onwards, whatever number of readers come, they all will be blocked on z rather than rsem, because we don't want multiple readers to block on rsem when there is a writer and writer wants to execute next. That is the idea behind this. So of course, if you really want to understand further, you need to take different cases and scan this code. If you scan this code properly and take those cases, you will get the idea. Okay, let me take this question. Sir, here what if signal y is triggered below wait rsem? Below wait rsem. Okay, this one. Okay. And the wait y at top of writer code uses up that signal for a new writer, then won't there be a problem? Okay. Suppose one writer signals y. After clearing this stage, it signals y. It means now y semaphore is released. If next writer comes and it also waits on Y. So what is the problem in that? I don't understand. You can unmute and you can ask if you want. I'm not getting your question. What kind of problem you see there?
Sir, so the wait Y means the another writer may be able to enter, and the wait Y at the bottom of that block will not be triggered by the means the signal Y will be changed, right?
Okay, 1 minute. Let us say one writer executed this signal Y. So Y is released. Now it is waiting for WSM. Let's say there is reader, so it is waiting. If there is no reader, it is not waiting, right? So in any case, let's say writer is writing or it is waiting. These are the two possible cases. Are you getting up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Now, in any case, if next writer comes, it will lock on write count. So wait Y, it is allowed. It will update its count and it will check this. But this is second writer maybe. So this is not going to be executed and it will signal Y. So this Y semaphore, it is only for this write count update. It has nothing to do with writing and reading. It is only for write count update. So that if there are two writers which are switching again and again and they are trying to execute same code, there is no race condition for this write count. That is why this Y is used. Otherwise, there is no purpose of this Y. Is it answering your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are few cases here. You can read them and you can trace them later on. Now, can we use this message passing mechanism to solve this readers writers problem? Again, that is very interesting. That is very interesting. There are few conditions that you need to understand. There is one variable count. And what is the meaning of this count? This count is a variable which is initialized, let's say 100, which we consider it is greater than maximum number of possible readers. We assume this, okay? Let's say the problem is defined such a way that there cannot be more than 100. I mean, there cannot be more than 99 readers. And that is why we initialize count variable to 100. Why we are doing so, you will get it, okay? Now there are three things. If count is greater than 0, then no writer is waiting. It means that no writer is waiting and there may or may not be readers active. Readers may be active, readers may not be active. So, okay, now before we discuss this, actually, we need to discuss three things. There are three mailboxes. Now again, let's come back to mailboxes. There are three mailboxes: read request mailbox, write request mailbox, and finished mailbox. Finished mailbox contains messages from readers or writers, anyone, from anyone. Okay, it is just containing message that someone is finished. And there are two main process: reader process, writer process, and there is one another process called controller process. So this reader and writer, they are communicating through controller. Controller will decide who will get chance. Reader will get chance or writer will get chance. Okay, the structure of this code is reader and writer, whenever they want to execute, they get a chance. They ask controller to give a chance, and controller will decide, okay, if there are reader is already reading, I cannot give direct chance to any other writer, or if writer is writing, I cannot give chance to any other writer or reader. So that controller decides. And how controller controls all this? Through messaging. So whenever reader, let's say reader wants to read, so what it will do, whatever the reader number is there, it will put that value in the message and send that message as a reader request. It will send that number as a message to reader request mailbox, which is accessible by controller also. And then it is waiting for some message, some confirmation message from the controller so that it can read, it can start reading. So that is waiting for that message. And if that message comes, it will start reading. And once it is done, again, it will put this I in the R message and send that I am finished. I am finished. So this read request, finish, all these are the mailboxes. Similarly, writer, what it does, it gives its number to this message and send write request to the controller. I mean, of course, it sends it to the mailbox, but controller reads that from the mailbox. And controller, if it finds suitable, it will send yes message, or you can say it says that, okay, you can read, So it will send that message to mbox J. If it is received, it will write. And then once it is finished, it will again set J equal to our message and then send that value to the finished. So this is very simple reader writer, which takes permission from controller. But now it is controller's job to decide when should I allow which process. And for that, it is using one variable called count. And for that, it is using one variable called count. Okay. Now what it does, if count is greater than 0, if count is greater than 0, it means there is no writer process actually. Then no writer is waiting. And there may or may not be readers active. If some readers are active, what it needs to do? First, it needs to service all finished messages. It means it needs to wait. Okay, if there is any finished message, it needs to service those finished messages to clear reader active readers, and then service write request and then read request. Okay, so let us understand this. Of course, it takes some time to understand this point. Okay, let me, rather than this way, let me go through the example. Let us say initially count is 100. Initially count is 100. Okay, and one reader request comes. One reader request comes. So what it will do? It will check count is greater than 0. Yes, it is 100. So it is waiting. It is checking. Is there any finished request already? Finished is a mailbox. So if that mailbox is not empty, it means some finished messages are there. Let me receive those finished messages and increment count. But this is the first reader request. There is no other reader writer. So this is not going to be true. Yes or no? This is not going to be true. So it need not to worry about finished mailbox. There is no finished request. But what it will then check? It will check, is there any request pending from the writer? If it is not, there is no pending request from the writer, then it will check, is there any pending request from reader? Yes, because already one reader has sent request. So in that case, what it will do, it will receive one message from reader request. It will receive this message, which is nothing but the reader number maybe. So it will reduce the count. It will reduce count from 100 to 99. So 99 count is there, and it will send message.id. It will send OK message to this message.id. That means it will send message to that receiver, and that receiver will receive that message and start reading. So this is the first reader. In that case, count will be reduced and message will be sent that, okay, you can start reading, because there is no writer. It has already checked. Is there any writer request? No, there is no writer request. Okay, you can allow, you are allowed to read. Okay, suppose while first reader is reading, writer comes. First reader is reading, writer comes. Now writer has sent request. So now again, this is a while loop, which is infinite loop, and this is over. This part is over if count is greater than 0. Still count is 99. So count equal to 0 is not true. Count less than 0 is not true. So it will come again, and count is greater than, because it is 99. So it will check, is there any finished request? The reader which was reading, still it is reading. So there is no finished request. Fine. There is no finished request. Is there any writer request waiting? What happens at this point? Is there any writer request waiting? Yes. What is the case? Yes. Are you there? No, there is a writer request. That is what I am telling you. Reader is reading and writer comes. So there is a writer request which is waiting. Reader is reading, writer is waiting. So count is 99 and writer is waiting. So this will be executed because it is not empty. There is a writer request. So what it will do, what this controller will do, it will read that writer request message. It will get that message ID and set it as a writer ID, and count will become current count minus 100. Current count is 99 minus 100. That is minus 1. That is minus 1. Count is minus 1. Then this is not going to be true because there is no other reader which is waiting. There is, I mean, this is else if actually. So if this is executed, this is not going to be executed. Right? So once this is executed, this part will be over, and it will check, is count equal to 0? No, it is minus count. So in that case, it will go in this loop. While count less than 0, it means there are some readers active and writer is waiting. If count is less than 0, it means some reader is active and writer is waiting. So in that case, first it will wait for reader to complete. It is waiting for finished messages. It is waiting for finished messages. Currently count is -1. So it needs to wait only for once, because after that count will become 0. After that count will become 0. So if there are multiple readers which are reading and writer is waiting, writer has to wait for all those readers to be completed. And whenever any reader is completed, count will become 1. It will be incremented by 1. And whenever count becomes 0, again it will come at this point, count equal to 0. It means this is a writer's time. So it will send OK message to that writer, and writer starts writing, and then after it is calling blocking receive. So until unless writer is completed, it is not going beyond. It is not going to do anything further. And as soon as writer is completed, it will make count equal to 100 again. It means now multiple readers can do that. So this is all about solving readers writer problems using message passing. If you have any question in this code, again, this is not that simple to understand. Again, you need to take cases and you need to scan that cases using this code, and you will get the clear idea. And if you have any question, you can ask. If you have any question, you can ask. So I assume that there is no question because no one is asking. Fine. So in that case, let's stop this session here.